The following segment is brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. I'm proud to be an ambassador for Future 42 and their mission to bring common sense and sanity back to the state of Washington. There is a special session that gets underway in Olympia tomorrow, and the sole purpose is for lawmakers to do what they should have done, frankly, 2 years ago. To do what they should have done, for sure, during the legislative session that ended last month, and that is to pass a law to make sure that drug possession is a crime in Washington state. It should have been the top priority of lawmakers during this legislative session, yet in 4 months they couldn't get it done. Because you had a faction of the Democratic Party in Olympia that simply wants to decriminalize possession of hard drugs. That's really what it boils down to. And you had, I think what's so disappointing about the fact that we even have to have a special session is that there were really, really good bipartisan bills put forth to come up with a law around drug possession that would, yes, prioritize treatment for people who are suffering in the throes of drug addiction, but would also have a criminal law enforcement element to it for people who over and over and over again refuse to get the treatment that they so desperately need. There was a solid bill that passed on a bipartisan basis in the state Senate. 14 Republican yes votes, 14 Democratic yes votes, had the support of mayors and police chiefs across the state, across the ideological spectrum. And that solid bipartisan proposal went to die in the House because House Democrats, House leadership, was held hostage by a small progressive faction of their party that simply does not want to see drug possession criminalized. And, the bill, as you'll recall, crashed and burned on the final day of the legislative session. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Governor Jay Inslee came up and said that he cared about getting this done. And I thought, well, where was he all session? And he announced a special legislative session for the 16th, which obviously is tomorrow. Now, I will say I have been told that there is a deal. There is a deal going ahead of tomorrow to at least something that leadership seems to have agreed on that has bipartisan support. Now, nothing is done until it's done, and who knows what'll happen when this ultimately goes up for a vote, but I'm told that it strikes a really good balance between a carrot and a stick. I'm told that it has the support of many mayors and county executives who are worried about this issue. So I'm very hopeful that after tomorrow, we will have a state law on the books criminalizing drug possession. But I think that tomorrow we also have to be hyper aware of people who vote against it and their motivations for voting against it. I still think, based on what I know, that you're going to have at least a handful of far-left members of the state legislature who vote against it because they think a gross misdemeanor is too much, is a penalty that you shouldn't have for drug possession. And the reason why I want to closely keep track of people who voted down for that reason is we have seen the extent of the drug crisis on our streets. I mean, we've been playing video from our friend Jonathan Cho, who has been out firsthand looking at the crisis, I mean, in ways that it's almost sometimes the video he captures too horrific to even show you. I mean, people who are not only using fentanyl and overdosing on fentanyl, but using this drug called tranq that is literally rotting their flesh away. And when I look at the videos and the images that Jonathan Cho has captured on the streets of Seattle and elsewhere, I can't help but think to myself, what would be the motivation? What would be the motivation for a state lawmaker, for a public servant to look at that and say, let's maintain the status quo? Let's keep going down the track that we're going down right now. To me, the decision is simple. Either you're going to take a vote tomorrow during the special session to save lives, or you're going to take a vote tomorrow to sign off on the suffering and the deaths on the streets of Seattle and other cities across the state. Because you have these people, and again, this faction of state lawmakers who, and I do believe it's a faction, I don't believe it's all Democrats in the state house or the Senate. You have this faction of progressive lawmakers who look at, the video that we have seen from Jonathan Cho, and they see compassion. They think it's compassionate to let people kill themselves on our sidewalks and in our alcoves and in our alleyways. They think it's more compassionate to let them die with a needle in their arm than to send them to jail for a couple days. And maybe it's just me, but I think people with that position don't belong within 500 yards of the state capitol. They don't belong in any position or post where they have any influence over our drug laws or drug treatment. Because when you take that position, I think you're truly saying to people, I don't care whether those who are suffering die.